Chapter 31. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Auction Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The sky had just started to light up when Lon Anren returned home. She took off her night clothes, but didn't rush to bed. Instead, she turned on her computer and looked up the Lu Xiang Pavilion. She had heard about it before, but had never been there. It was said to be a mysterious place. It was a place only the wealthiest people in Rome City could enter, and they had to be a member. There wasn't much information about the Lu Xiang Pavilion, most of which wasn't accurate anyway. Ding dong. Lon Anren received a text. Boss, Lu Xiang Ge's auction is being held tonight at 8 p.m. I have copied the invitation card. Your name is Zhao Lei, the son of Zhao Gang, a nouveau riche in Rome City. He started his business excavating coal. No one knows anyone in the Lu Xiang Pavilion, they only look at their invitation card. To be on the safe side, you should prepare a veil or a mask so that others won't recognize you. Tomorrow, I will pass you the invitation card near the Lon family villa, so keep an eye out for me. I understand. Lon Anren switched off her laptop after receiving the news and went to sleep. The alarm rang thrice before Lon Anren woke up. To prevent her family from suspecting anything, she said that she would be going to a classmate's house to play. Lon Tingyun and his wife didn't suspect anything, as they thought that their child had grown up and should have her own social circle, so they didn't stop her. Lon Anren carried a backpack, seemingly dressed like an extremely well-behaved female student, but what others didn't know was that inside her backpack were cosmetics and her outfits for today's auction. She walked out naturally towards the sunshine, emitting a youthful aura. Suddenly, a thin man touched her, and while nobody was paying attention, he placed a stiff magnetic card in her hand. Lon Anren took the card and slipped it into her pocket as though nothing had happened, continuing to walk forward. From the outside, the Lu Xiang Pavilion looked like a huge teahouse, and the people inside were all patrons. The Lu Xiang Pavilion was at the top of the teahouse. Lon Anren walked into the teahouse's bathroom, removed her backpack, took out the clothes, and started transforming her face to look like a man. She wore men's clothing, put on a black mask, and a baseball cap. She stored her bag at the front desk and strode out. She took the elevator to the top floor. The two burly security officers at the door stopped her. I'm sorry, sir, it is not convenient for you to enter here. Lon Anren didn't speak, but took out the invitation card. The security guard took the invitation card and placed it on the machine in his hand. A blue light appeared on the magnetic card and there was a beep. The security guard looked at Lon Anren, returned the magnetic card to her, and said in a deep voice, Sir, please take off your mask. We need to scan your face. Lon Anren's heart tightened, wondering if she had been caught already. She kept her calm and slowly took off the mask with her slender fingers, revealing an exquisite face. The security guard took a camera and scanned Lon Anren's face carefully. These 5 seconds were extremely long. Lon Anren's heart was beating rapidly, but there was no flaw in her face. Sir, please enter. The two security officers gestured her in, pushing open the doors for Lon Anren. Lon Anren heaved a sigh of relief and took large strides in. After entering, she realized that the Lu Xiang Pavilion lived up to its name. It didn't seem like a large room, but it was extremely spacious inside. At the bottom was the auction table, which was actually a small pavilion. The audience seats were developed like steps. There were private rooms at the top that only the most distinguished guests, VIP guests, were eligible to enter. Lon Anren's identity was that of someone from the middle class, so her position was neither high nor low. It was right under the private room and had a clear view. In fact, it didn't matter where she sat, the most important thing was to get what she wanted. She couldn't see the people in the private rooms, but she remembered almost everyone else. Everyone present was well known, and the higher they were seated, the richer they were. Even the least wealthy person was carrying a bag that cost hundreds of thousands, which demonstrated the kind of money in this auction. Before the auction started, she observed everyone and roughly remembered their traits. This was her habit. Every time she arrived in a place, she liked to remember the details. She felt that it would come in handy one day. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she smiled. She didn't expect to meet one of her classmates here. It could mean trouble. She glanced around and once she was certain there wasn't any danger, she sat down slowly. Lon Anren's every action could be seen clearly by the people above in the private room. Master Rong, what are you looking at? Mo-san asked softly. Who is that person in the baseball cap downstairs? Mo Jinrong asked slowly, his voice icy cold. BDNVL.M. Mo-san took out the roster and looked at the seating arrangement. He said, he is Zhao Lei, son of Zhao Gang, the nouveau riche. Zhao Gang isn't feeling well so he couldn't come to the auction today, so his son is here to replace him. Is there anything wrong? Mo-san asked. Mo Jinrong didn't reply, but stared at the person closely. He found the person's back a little familiar, as if he had seen it before. Chapter 32 You are listening at novelfull.audio. A bottle that costs 2 billion. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Soon there was a gong sound and the auction officially began. The host on stage was also wearing a mask. He held a microphone and spoke in a clear voice, everyone, the auction has officially begun. Today's first collection is a fine piece of porcelain ware from the Song dynasty. It is the most expensive sky blue round jug RU ware. The starting price is 80 million yuan. Let the auction begin. 81 million. 90 million. 1 billion. There was a lot of excitement from the audience. Such a good item was rare and having it was a symbol of wealth. Master Rong, are we bidding? Mo-san frowned. Have you forgotten our purpose today? Mo Jinrong replied without raising his head. I know, it's for the fennel, but we should at least bid for one item. I heard that there is a sapphire being auctioned today. If we give it to old Mrs. Lon, she would be very happy. It would also be a good gift for Miss Lon, Mo-san said excitedly. Do I need you to mind my business? Mo Jinrong looked up at him coldly and said slowly. Mo-san waved his hand in silence. 1 billion, once. 1 billion, twice, the host shouted. 1.2 billion. 1.5 billion. 2 billion. There were two people in the audience competing, constantly increasing the price, and the others were watching the show. Young Master Lin, stop adding to the price. There are many good items, why must you compete with him? The little assistant was a little distressed. Why do you care? This is my dad's money, I'll spend it as I want, the masked Lin Cheng replied disdainfully. Lin Guodong was always busy with his business and would often give Lin Cheng bank cards which had a lot of money. He wanted to use money to make up for his love for Lin Cheng and with time, Lin Cheng started to feel dissatisfied and could only use money to pass time. The audience was amazed that such a bottle could go for this price. 2.1 billion. The other party raised his sign again. Lin Cheng was anxious, he didn't have that much money on hand. Damn it. 2.1 billion, once. 2.1 billion, twice. 2.1 billion, thrice. Congratulations to the gentleman for acquiring this treasure. The host rang the gong as he spoke and the item was taken off the shelf. The next item was a sapphire and a beam of light was shown on it, making it crystal clear. Master Rong, look, it's so beautiful, Miss Lon will love it. Mo-san was extremely excited, such a big sapphire was rare. Mo Jinrong didn't even glance up, he wasn't interested in it at all. Instead, his gaze fell on Lon Anren under the stage. She didn't move at all in the intense scene just now, giving the sense that she must be here with a purpose. There was another stir amongst the audience and Lon Anren cringed from the noise. She hadn't been in such a noisy environment in a long time and only felt frustrated. There were many items being auctioned today, hence, it was moving quickly. Soon, it was the last item. Lon Anren had been dormant long enough and she finally straightened and perked up, prepared for a fight. Everyone, the next item will be the last treasure in our auction. It is extremely precious. A live bunch of fennel. You may not have seen it before as it is said to take 10 years to grow. Fennel can cure all illnesses and fennel that blossoms is even more precious. Everyone, please take a look at this treasure. Several security guards pushed up a cart covered with a red cloth. The host uncovered the red cloth and under the glass cover was a piece of grass of about 5 centimeters, which was full of vitality. Everyone, this is fennel. The bidding will start at 10 million. As soon as the host finished speaking, Lon Anren finally raised her sign and said in a low voice, 20 million. The audience sighed. This person actually raised the price so much at once. Is this herb really so good? 21 million. There was a voice from the private room above. 22 million. Lin Cheng became excited and joined in the fight. Young Master Lin, why do you want the herb? It'll be a pity if it dies, the little assistant said with regret. He wasn't exactly speaking nonsense as Lin Cheng was jinxed with this kind of thing. Anything he grew never lived past a day, even his tortoise couldn't live more than an hour. Wasn't it a waste if such an expensive herb died? Shut up. What has my money got to do with you? Can't I bring it back to cook with it? Lin Cheng was most annoyed about people making irresponsible remarks on the sidelines, it was disrupting his peace. After being scolded, the little assistant remained silent and lowered his head. 25 million. Lon Anren added to the price. 26 million. There was another voice from the private room above. 27 million. Lin Cheng followed closely behind, not showing any weakness. During this period, several people who raised the price were suppressed by Lin Cheng. This was a battle between the three of them. Master Rong, it seems like these two are determined to fight to the end, Mo San said as he watched the tense situation. Watch Xiao Lei. Mo Jinrong said with piercing eyes. 30 million. Lon Anren continued to add to the price. She had to get it regardless of the price. This was her mom's life she was fighting for. 35 million. Mo Jinrong raised the sign again and this time Lin Cheng seemed to be really interested. He was willing to play with the two of them. Chapter 33 You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Expensive Herb Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations, 40 million. Lin Cheng shocked the audience with the price. 40 million for an herb. Some people couldn't believe that this herb was so valuable. Although it was said that it was a magical drug, there wasn't such a thing in the world, it was just a money-making gimmick. 41 million. Lon Anren said loudly, her voice neither servile nor overbearing. Raise that to 80 million. Mo Jinrong replied calmly. Master Rong, what exactly are you going to use this for? Does it require so much money? Mo San frowned. What's with all the nonsense? Just raise the price, Mo Jinrong said impatiently. 80 million. Mo San shouted towards the stage. The audience exploded. An herb was raised to 80 million. It wasn't a price anyone could match. Damn it. Lin Cheng had already gotten several treasures, but if this went on, he would be broke. Young Master Lin, we really don't have that much money, the little assistant braved himself and reminded him. I know, I don't need you to remind me. Lin Cheng replied impatiently. 85 million. Lon Anren raised the card, causing Lin Cheng to start to panic. 90 million. The person upstairs raised the price and the audience exclaimed. Goodness! I wonder who this wealthy person is. Is this an auction or a competition? Lon Anren started to feel uneasy. She frowned and looked at the person upstairs. Which B** starred is competing with me. Since he wants to play, I'll play with him. 1 billion. Lon Anren said casually and the audience exploded. This was the first time that Lu Xianggu had sold more than one item above 1 billion. This was quite the rare occasion. Crazy, crazy. 1 billion. Master Rong, does Zhao Lei not know how much money his family has? Mo San asked in shock. Although Zhao Lei's family has a mining factory, can he take out 1 billion so easily? Are mine owners so rich? Mo Jinrong frowned. Lin Cheng was powerless at this moment. He didn't dare to raise the price anymore. It didn't matter how rich he was, he couldn't stand the fight. Who is he? He dares to speak so arrogantly. I know everyone in Rome City that can come up with 1 billion yuan. Who is this prodigal son? He glanced at Lon Anren and asked in confusion. He must be the son of a mine owner, but I never knew a mine owner could be so rich. Perhaps it's a diamond mine, the little assistant asked enviously. The son of a mine owner. He really doesn't know his own ability. He's going to be in trouble if he can't fork up the money. The Lu Xiang Pavilion wasn't a place anyone could just come and go. If he couldn't afford to pay, he would be bankrupt and would even have to sell his organs. The mine owner might not even get 1 billion yuan after selling the mine. Lin Cheng thought with great disdain how there were so many people pretending to be cool and rich these days. 1 billion, once. 1 billion, twice. Anyone going to raise the price? The host asked. 1.5 billion. Upstairs, Mo San trembled when he spoke. Were they really going to spend so much money on an herb? Lon Anren continued to increase the price without batting an eyelid, completely unaware of the ringing from her cell phone. 2 billion. What? 2 billion. Did I hear that wrong? How frightening, a woman beside her exclaimed in shock. Is Zhao Lei crazy? The Lu Xiang Pavilion wouldn't forgive him if he doesn't have enough money, Mo San said in shock. 2.5 billion. Let me teach that ignorant fool. Mo Jinrong said teasingly, and his lips lifted into an evil smile. 2.5 billion. Mo San shouted. Lon Anren frowned, wondering if he would ever stop. Her card didn't have such money. Lon Anren raised the sign again. Sorry, I'm asking for a break. This gentleman is asking for a break, so let's take a 5-minute break. The host declared. Lon Anren stood up and walked towards the private room and said respectfully, Sorry, I am determined to get this phenol, I hope you will let me have it. It was silent for a long time. Sir, I really need the phenol herb, I hope that you will give it to me, Lon Anren said again. Mo Jinrong found the voice familiar, as though he had heard it before. He frowned. Sorry, let's compete fairly. This is an auction, how can there be comedy? I don't think there's anything wrong with the higher bidder getting the item. If you want it, let's compete. At this point, Lon Anren had nothing more to say. Since he wanted to compete, she would go all out. This phenol was hers, regardless of what it took. She turned away angrily and returned to her position to sit down. Don't you find that voice familiar? Mo Jinrong asked. It sounded like Lon Anren's voice. Mo San was suddenly enlightened and Mo Jinrong suddenly opened his eyes wide, looking at the person in front in disbelief. That voice and figure did indeed resemble Lon Anren. But this is the Lu Xiang Pavilion, the security and secrecy is both extremely strict. How did she get in? Chapter 34 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mom, hospitalized translator. Henyi Translations editor. Henyi Translations, the auction continues, the host declared. 3 billion. Lon Anren gritted her teeth and continued to up the price. 4 billion. Mo Jinrong followed. He wanted to see how rich Lon Anren was. 4.5 billion. Now, Lon Anren felt her heart ache every time she increased the price. How many herbs and medicine would she need to sell, and how many therapy sessions would she need to give in order to earn it back? 5 billion. The people present took a breath, as this was the most expensive thing ever sold in the Lu Xiang Pavilion's history. 5.5 billion. Lon Anren silently prayed that he wouldn't raise the price any further, because this was the last of her money, and she could only steal it if this went on. 5.5 billion once. 5.5 billion twice, 5.5 billion, thrice. Congratulations to the gentleman for obtaining the phenol, the host said excitedly. The audience broke into a resounding applause. They had never seen such a grand show. Master Rong, why aren't you raising the price anymore? Mo San asked curiously. That herb isn't worth it. Investigate Lon Anren and use all it takes to find information on her. Mo Jinrong looked at Lon Anren silently. This woman had a secret. He had personally arranged the security in the Lu Xiang Pavilion and had used all the latest technology. How did she get in without a trace? Although the Lon family was rich, they were not to such an extent. Lon Anren appeared to be very rich, and this wasn't something an ordinary student could normally accomplish. Yes, Master Rong. Mo San replied respectfully. In the audience, Lon Anren was ecstatic. It seemed like that person wasn't really that rich. She was worried for nothing. She had only 6 billion in total, and now, she only had 50 million left, which was enough. Lon Anren went backstage to get the prize and to pay up the 5 billion. Everyone was surprised that she had so much money at such a young age, and many people wanted to get her contact information, but she just shook her head. It wouldn't be good if she was exposed, it was better to keep a low profile. L.RG. After getting the phenol, Lon Anren saw that time was almost up. The auction took the entire day. She was afraid that her parents would be worried, so she went to the front desk to pick up the bag, change her clothes, and to hurry home. She was dumbfounded when she reached home. The door was open, but there wasn't anyone inside. The pool of fresh blood in the hall frightened her, and she thought that the house was robbed. She hurriedly took out her mobile phone. Just then, she realized Lon Yanran had called her countless times, but her phone was muted during the auction, so she hadn't heard it. She hurriedly called back. Lon Yanran's anxious voice was on the other side of the phone. Sis, what happened to you? I called you so many times, why didn't you pick up? Something happened to Mom. Lon Yanran cried. Something happened to Mom. Lon Anren didn't have time to explain, and she asked anxiously. After you left, Mom suddenly vomited blood and convulsed. She has been in the intensive care unit the whole day, and the doctor issued a critical illness notice several times. Lon Yanran was sitting on the ground and crying weakly. What? What happened to Mom? Lon Anren was pale with fright and fell to the ground feebly, tears streaming down her face. How could you make your sister worried? Pass me the phone. Lon Tingyun walked over and snatched the phone, pretending to be calm. Anren, don't worry. Mom's condition is much better, don't worry. Dad, wait for me, I'm coming over now. Lon Anren hung up and rushed to the hospital. In the hospital, Lon Yanran's eyes were swollen from crying. He couldn't imagine a life without his mother. He curled up in a corner of the hospital, not daring to look up at his mother with tubes attached to her. Yanran, don't be sad. I will save Mom. Lon Tingyun knelt down and comforted Lon Yanran. Dad, Mom will get better, right? Lon Yanran sobbed. Of course, she will, Lon Tingyun replied with certainty. After a while, Lon Anren ran to the hospital's emergency room, panting. Seeing Lan Yanran's appearance, she couldn't help but feel her heart ache. This was how he looked in her past life when he was upset. "Dad, Yanran!" Lan Anran's tears fell and she shouted. "Sis, you're finally here, will Mom be alright?" Lan Yanran ran over. He hugged Lan Anran and cried. The two of them cried for a while. Lan Anran was wearing a protective suit and she walked into the intensive care unit and looked at her pale mother who was lying on the hospital bed. Her eyes immediately welled up. She quickly calmed down and looked at Li Yueru with a professional perspective. The person lying on the hospital bed wasn't just her mother, she was also her patient. She wiped her eyes and felt her mother's pulse. Her pulse was weak and her heart, liver, spleen, lungs and kidneys were weakening. She looked at Li Yueru's eyes again and her pupils were a little slackened. If she didn't receive treatment soon, her mother would be in a dangerous condition. But Li Yueru had a strong will, so she had time. "Mom, you have to stay strong, I will definitely save you," Lan Anran clasped her mother's hand tightly and said. Chapter 35. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mom, I'm going to save you. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Lan Anran wiped her tears and walked out of the ward. She couldn't say that she was going to study medicine, she only told Lan Tingyun and Lan Yanran that she was going home to help her mother pack some items and that she was making some herbal tea. Now, her mother could only rely on the herbal soup to prolong her life. Lan Tingyun nodded and let her go home. Lan Anran had a limited time to work on the research. She had to go back to her hut in the village, that was her main testing ground. After a night of intensive testing, the drug started to show development, but Lan Anran didn't dare to stop. After all, this hadn't been tested on a human and if anything went wrong, her mom might end up dead. Just in case, Lan Anran made a decision to try the medicine first before her mother. She retrieved a long and slender needle, took some reagents that had just developed, stretched out her fair arm, located her blood vessels, and injected the needle into her body. For her mother, it was worth it. In the next hour, Lan Anran experienced adverse reactions such as vomiting and fever. She thought it was the wrong proportion of the medicine, so she reduced the dosage and gave herself a shot again. This time the effect was relieved. The previous portion might have been too strong, which caused Lan Anran to feel dizzy. Regardless, she needed to save her ingredients. After confirming that the medicine worked, Lan Anran took the reagents, went home to get some clothes and then hurried to the hospital. The sky was already bright. Lan Tingyun was panicking in the hospital. Li Yueru's condition was erratic, so he hadn't slept the entire night for fear that her condition would deteriorate. "Dad, Yanran, is Mom alright?" Lan Anran carried her things, panting tiredly. Lan Tingyun looked at Lan Anran's yellow and haggard face, asking worriedly, "Anran, what's wrong? You don't look well. Are you ill?" "I'm alright, Dad, I'll go in and see Mom. The two of you wait for me outside." Lan Anran shook her head. In order to prevent them from worrying, she forced a bright smile and entered the intensive care unit. "Mom, you have to stay strong, I'm here to save you." Lan Anran hurriedly took out a tube of reagent and a needle from the bag. She skillfully replaced the needle, diluted the medicine, and gently plunged it into Li Yueru's arm. From the outside, Lan Anran seemed to be holding her mother's hand. Lan Tingyun and Lan Yanran didn't doubt this either. They looked at the two of them and leaned against the wall, a little helpless. After the first injection was over, Lan Anran held the needle and quietly waited for her mother's response. The original high blood pressure on the ECG gradually dropped and her heart rate gradually returned to normal. Lan Anran touched Li Yueru's pulse, finally showing a happy smile on her face. Mom is finally improving. Next, Anran just had to feed her herbal soup every day and give her a small dose after 1 month. Lan Tingyun outside the ward was still trying his best to find medicine to save Li Yueru. He heard that there was a special medicine abroad and he was about to call when Lon Anran calmly walked out and said, "Dad, Yenran, don't worry, Mom's condition is much better. I believe she will get better soon." Lon Tingyun thought that she was trying to comfort him and replied sadly, "Anran, I heard that there is a special medicine abroad, I will ask my friends abroad about it." "Dad, why should we go to a Western doctor when we run a Chinese medicine hospital?" "Don't worry, Mom will be fine after one more day," Lon Anran replied slowly. She could calm down now that her mom was doing better. Lon Yenran was influenced by his sister's confident expression. "Sis, I believe you. Dad, don't find the other doctor. If Sis says she will get better, she definitely will. Let's wait one more day. We can seek out another doctor if she doesn't improve." Lon Tingyun nodded and put down his phone. Suddenly, Lon Anran blacked out and she crumbled onto the floor. Lon Tingyun was frightened. He had noticed that her complexion was bad and eyes were dull. She was indeed ill. "Sis, what's wrong?" Lon Yenran asked with concern. Lon Tingyun felt Lon Yenran's forehead and frowned. "Why is her head so hot?" "Your sister has a fever. I'll bring her to the emergency room." He carried Lon Anran and ran to the emergency room, while Lon Yenran stayed to take care of his mother. In the emergency department downstairs, the doctor frowned when he took her blood for a test. Her blood contained high levels of medicine, which may have caused her to develop a high fever. "Director Lon, has your child used any medicine recently?" the doctor asked. "No," Lon Tingyun shook his head. "That's strange. The medicine content in her blood is very high. It is not poisonous, but the dose was too high, which caused the high fever. I will give her an injection to reduce the fever," the doctor said. "Thank you, Dr. Wu." Lon Tingyun nodded his head. After an hour, Lon Anran's fever subsided and her pale face finally had some color. "Dad," she opened her eyes weakly and called out softly. "Anran, you're awake. What happened? What did you do the entire night?" "Dr. Wu said that your blood contained a high dose of medicine. Did you do something behind our backs?" Lon Tingyun's solemn tone carried a hint of heartache. Chapter 36. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Medical Miracle Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. I'm fine. I was worried about Mom, so I went back to make some herbal soup. I tried it myself and might have drank too much. Lon Anran couldn't explain the real reason for the medicine in her blood, so she could only lie. "You silly child, should you test medicine so easily? Don't do that again. Your mom is not well and would be upset if you fell ill too," Lon Tingyun reprimanded. "I know, Dad. I'm sorry for making you worry," Lon Anran said obediently. "How is Mom?" "Don't worry, Yenran is watching her, there won't be any problem at the moment," Lon Tingyun comforted her. At this point, no news was the best news. Suddenly, Lon Tingyun's phone rang. It was Lon Yenran who called. His heart tightened. Did something happen to Yueru? He became anxious. "Yenran, what's wrong? Did something happen to Mom?" Lon Tingyun asked anxiously. "Nothing, Mom is great. The doctor said she can be transferred to the normal ward." Lon Tingyun cried out in joy, "Really? That's great." Lon Tingyun was overjoyed. He hung up and hugged Lon Anran happily. "Anran, your mom can be transferred to the normal ward. That's great. Hurry over to see her, the drip is about to finish, hurry." Lon Anran was overjoyed as well. She didn't know the fennel herb would be so useful. 5 billion yuan for her mother's life was a worthy deal. Lon Tingyun nodded and ran towards the main section of the hospital, and the entire journey, he was convinced that bringing Anran back was the right decision. She wasn't a jinx, she was a lucky star. Li Yueru successfully transferred to the normal ward, but she was still in a coma. What happened? Why was it so sudden? Lan Tingyun found it odd, but he was still very happy. I don't know, it's considered a miracle. Originally, Mrs. Lan's organs were failing, but during the inspection just now, we found everything normal and even stronger than before. This is really a medical miracle, the doctor exclaimed. That's great, thank you. Lan Tingyun shook his hand to express his gratitude. Dad, Sis was right, Mom is definitely going to get better. Now, Lan Yanran trusted Lan Anren even more, it was simply an obsession. Lan Tingyun nodded happily and said, now that your mom's alright, hurry to school and take a day off for your sister. Alright, Dad. Rome City University. Due to Anren's absence, the gossip wheel started to spin in class. Some said that she was playing truant to get married, while some said that she found the classes too difficult and decided not to come. Others said that she was afraid of the competition against Sun Hui and had gotten herself caught for a crime. Of course, all these rumors came from Lan Yashin and her gang of friends. They began spreading across the school. Yashin, your sister wasn't here for the first half of the day, will she really be missing the second half as well? Her good friend, Gu Qiu laughed. She was like a loudspeaker in the school, there wasn't any gossip in the school that she didn't know. Of course, the gossip usually had something to do with her. I don't know, Sis has always been willful, but I wouldn't know what she is up to. The lessons in the experimental class are indeed tougher than the ordinary class and the workload is heavy. Perhaps she couldn't take it, Lan Yashin said innocently, but deep inside, she wished Lan Anren would never come back. Yashin, I heard that Sun Hui from Class 1 is going to compete against her in the pharmacy competition. Lan Anren will have to leave the experimental class if she loses, while Sun Hui will have to clean all the toilets in the entire block for a month if she loses, her other good friend, Yang Qing, said. She had always liked Lan Yanran even though she was 1 term older than him. As the saying goes, it's a blessing to marry an older woman if she likes younger guys. But the fact that Lan Anren was his sister was annoying. She was both pretty and arrogant. She hated boastful women. That's hilarious. Do you think Lan Anren can win the competition? Seems like she's going to lose this time. Did she deliberately skip school because she is afraid of embarrassing herself? Gu Qiu laughed. Lan Yashin shook her head and smiled in silence. She doesn't know her own abilities. She thinks she can win a competition just because she is pretty, but it isn't a beauty pageant. She's going to end up embarrassing herself when the time comes. Suddenly, someone shouted, Lan Yanran is here. The hunk is so handsome. Yang Qing was so excited that she ran out to look. Lan Yanran really came out of the teacher's office. What is he doing here? She asked curiously. Lan Anren seems to be sick and he's here to take the day off. I heard that their mom is sick and she is also sick, the people that just came out of the teacher's office said. Chapter 37 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not at fault translator. Henyi Translations editor. Henyi Translations, it must be a lie. Lan Anren is pretending to be sick so that she doesn't have to compete against Sun Hui. Sun Hui is the second best in the school. Who could beat her besides Yashin? Gu Qiu replied firmly. That may not be true. Aren't there rumors that Lan Anren is bad luck to her parents? It seems like she has jinxed her mother, Yang Qing analyzed with regret. Don't talk nonsense. She is my sister and the person that is ill is my second aunt. I'll visit her after school, Lan Yashin retorted. She didn't know Li Yueru was ill, but even though she said she would visit her, it was all just talk, she wouldn't go over. Their family's troubles had nothing to do with her. Yashin, you're too kind. This time, even the heavens will support you in the pharmacy competition. Yang Qing nodded. Of course, I have a secret manual, Lan Yashin said proudly. These past few days, she had been immersing herself in her grandma's notebook. Her grandparents were well known in the medical field and their notes were naturally top-notch. She had made a lot of progress. Her friends crowded over when they heard about the secret manual. Secret manual. Yashin, you're the best, share it with us. Gu Qiu wanted to look as well. Of course she knew Lan Yashin's abilities, as the Lan family was a medical family, and their ancestors were said to be the emperor's imperial physicians. She didn't know whether it was true or not, but it couldn't hurt to be her friend. I can't. Grandma said it's a top secret of the Lan family, so it can't be shared. Lan Yashin gave them a teasing smile. It was the Lan family's treasure and even Lan Anren didn't have access to it, so how could she show it to outsiders? The crowd was disappointed. When Lan Yashin saw their disappointment, she immediately smiled. I can't show you the secret manual, but I can tell you a little secret. What? They immediately perked up. This competition is different from the past. In the past, you would show the effects of your medicine to the judges on the spot and they would give you their scores. It is different this time. There will be a foreigner amidst the judges. You know this, right? Lan Yashin smiled, her eyes bright, signaling them to pay attention. They immediately understood. The foreigner would be easier to deal with than the local judges. They just had to prepare some gifts and use their connections to get a good score. Yashin, you really are the best. How do you know such things? Yang Qing had always been grateful for Lan Yashin. Of course, I heard this from my dad. He has wide connections and this time, some of his friends are organizing the competition. Lan Yashin smiled. She just told them that there would be a special judge, she didn't tell them to do anything. What happened next would be their own idea and couldn't be blamed on her. 2 more days passed. As the days to the pharmacy competition inched closer, everyone was rushing to adjust their formulas, hoping to perfect it. Lan Anren wasn't interested in the competition, as she was focused on taking care of Li Yueru. Lan Yanran would visit his mom in the hospital every day, hoping she would wake up. Dad, when is mom going to wake up? Wait a little while more, your mom's health is stable, so don't worry. Focus on the competition. The competition is approaching, is your medicine ready? The Lan family's name can't be embarrassed again. Lan Tingyun thought of the competition again. The Lan family was always embarrassed and despised over this. Because of this, old Mrs. Lan would mock him and his family. He couldn't hold his head up with pride anymore. The thought gave Lan Yanran a headache. He had been busy with his mother and hadn't had time to work on his medicine. Besides, he was the worst every year and he couldn't even treat colds or fevers, not to mention help the Lan family win honor. He couldn't bow out of the competition either, as his father wouldn't agree. Hence, he could only move forward. Lan Anren didn't say anything, she just walked to the bedside silently, holding her mother's hand tightly and watching her quietly. She never thought that her mother would be this pretty, lying on the bed like a sleeping beauty. In her past life, why didn't she know to cherish her? The thought brought tears to her eyes. Suddenly, she felt her mother's hand move. She thought it was a hallucination and dried her eyes to have a clearer look. There was really a reaction. Lan Anren was slightly agitated. Mom is awake, Mom is awake. Lan Tingyun and Lan Yanran hurriedly ran over. Li Yueru opened her eyes slowly and said weakly, Anren, Yanran, my love, I'm alive again. Lan Tingyun nodded excitedly with tears filling his eyes. Dear, you're finally awake. How do you feel? Li Yueru smiled, a glow to her face. I feel much better. Before, I really thought I wouldn't make it and was thinking about how to tell you. But now, it's all good. I'm alive again. PSSH, don't talk nonsense, you're better now. You're going to live to a ripe old age, Lan Tingyun said solemnly. He was definitely a good husband. Lan Yanran went to call the doctor over to check his mother's condition. The doctor exclaimed after examining her, Director Lon, Mrs. Lon really is a miracle. Her health is getting better every day and she is recovering very quickly. She can be discharged soon. Really? That's great. Lon Tingyun smiled. He found it strange as there wasn't any cure previously, but now, she was miraculously cured. Was it perhaps? Chapter 38. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Right by his side translator. Henyi Translations editor. Henyi Translations. He looked at his obedient daughter and had his suspicions. Did Anren's herbal soup play a big role in this? Anren, where did you get the formula for your herbal soup? Your mother got better after drinking it. What other herbs were inside? Dad, it's a formula from the countryside, consisting of several wild grasses. It is mainly to cure insomnia, and once Mom's sleep quality improved, her illness was reduced. Don't worry, I will definitely make it for her often. Lon Anren smiled. She could tell her father was getting suspicious. She decided to stop attracting attention to avoid suspicion. Lon Tingyun nodded. Sometimes, local prescriptions and remedies were useful. He was pleased to have such a sensible daughter. Mo Family Villa. Master Rong, young Master Zhe is here, Mo San said respectfully. MMH, let him in, Mo Jinrong replied coldly. There's no need, I'm here. Master Rong, you only come to me when you need a favor. Do you still need me to find Zero? Rong Zhe wore a pink suit and had a piercing in his left ear. Even his tone was flirtatious. No, I know your skills are good, I want you to go fishing, Mo Jinrong said softly. Fish. Your lotus pond is filled with ornamental fishes. Aren't they poisonous? Rong Zhe looked at the lotus pond and frowned. I was referring to a person, a hacker called Q. Find him, I need his help, Mo Jinrong said solemnly. Q, I heard that he's the third best in the world. You want to buy him off? I'm not complaining, but first you were trying to find Zero and now you want help finding Q. In the end, you haven't found either of them. I can help you this time, but you'll have to give me some encouragement. Rong Zhe smiled. What do you want? Mo Jinrong glanced up to look at him and asked in a deep voice. Forget it, I don't want it. Your stare is making my hair stand on end. I can send out a reward post online. The person who finds Xiang Tian will be awarded 10 billion yuan. What do you think? Rong Zhe looked at Mo Jinrong. Master Zhe, I'm afraid that won't do. Young Master Mo, before Mo San could finish his words, Mo Jinrong interrupted, is that necessary? Young Master, Xiang Tian is a mysterious being and there are many people in the world who have been wanting to know their real identity. Don't you think Q will want to find out? If you don't use this method, I'm afraid there won't be a better one to attract Q. Don't worry, when the time comes, I'll send a pawn over and we'll ambush him. Isn't that better? Rong Zhe looked at him tightly with his clear eyes. Mo Jinrong nodded in agreement. Q was probably the only person who could find Zero. I heard that you married the young lady of the Lon family. Why didn't you tell me? Rong Zhe was quite surprised about Mo Jinrong's marriage. In the past, every time Mo Jinrong got married, his bride passed away. Wasn't the new bride worried about death? Why would I tell you? Mo Jinrong turned and asked. The outside world treats you like a ghost, so Miss Lon really can't be an ordinary person. I really want to know what kind of person isn't afraid of you. Rong Zhe smiled, picked up a package of fish food, pinched some, and slowly scattered it in the pond. She really isn't ordinary, Mo Jinrong said softly. Master Rong, you and Miss Lon have been married for several days. Would you like to inform old Mrs. Rong? She has been waiting to meet Miss Lon, Mo San reminded. Let's wait a while longer, it's not the right time. Mo Jinrong looked at the fish in the water and his gaze suddenly softened. Master Rong, are you worried that your identity will be exposed? Rong Zhe continued to ask sneakily. Some things haven't been figured out yet, so it wouldn't be good to meet in such a rush. Find Q soon, I really need him now. Since being together, he was always worried that Lon Anren had a secret. He could sense that she wasn't ordinary. This could only be settled after his investigation was complete. I understand, don't worry. I know you need him to find Zero, but why are you so sure Zero is still alive? Rong Zhe felt that after all these years, something might have happened. Otherwise, how could there still be no clues of this person? I'm certain. I believe I have seen her recently. Mo Jinrong's eyes deepened. What? You saw her? Where? Was she pretty? Is she married? Rong Zhe asked curiously. He really wanted to know the appearance of the person Mo Jinrong had been searching for. Why was he so certain she was a female? Perhaps he didn't have a girlfriend and felt lonely. Mo Jinrong rolled his eyes in silence. I believe I saw her. I can't think of anyone else besides her who could have saved me. It must have been her. After coming back from the hospital last time, Mo Jinrong had been thinking about who could have cured his stubborn illness. Lon Anren looked weak and he didn't know her secrets, but a countryside girl probably wouldn't know how to treat someone like him. When he was free, he would have to ask Lon Anren if she saw anyone. Perhaps, Zero had come to his rescue. Chapter 39. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The Pharmacy Competition Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Li Yueru's health was getting better day by day and Lon Anren could finally prepare for the pharmacy competition without worry. Lon Yashin had been working hard for the past 2 days. For the sake of the competition, she stayed in her room every day, trying to figure out the best formulas for her medicine. In just a blink of an eye, it was the day of the competition. The number of participants this year was higher than before, with more than 10,000 participants from all over Rome City. There were 2 rounds to the competition, a written test and an interview. The first was an assessment of their theoretical knowledge. Lon Yashin had a disgusted expression when she saw Lon Anren's name on the list at the entrance of the examination room. Ack. Just my luck. It was so unlucky to be assigned to the same examination room as her. Yan Qing comforted her. Yashin, it's okay. Look, the test is about to start, but your sister hasn't even arrived. Did her fear keep her away? Lon Yashin shook her head. She hoped that Lon Anren wouldn't show to avoid shaming the Lon family. At this moment, the facilitator came over, opened the door, and let the candidates in. Lon Anren was the only one who hadn't arrived yet, the others were all there. Yashin, I think your sister didn't turn up because she was afraid of embarrassing herself. Don't worry, you will definitely be first place this time. Yang Qing smiled flatteringly. Yashin nodded, smiling with satisfaction. Even if Lon Anren came, could a countryside girl steal her position? At this moment, Sun Hui was also sitting in the examination room. She was assigned to the same class as Lon Anren and Lon Yashin. She really hadn't expected it, but these were her competitors and she wanted to see how these fake sisters were going to compete. When the exam bell rang, Sun Hui looked at Lon Anren's empty seat and presumed that she was scared. She could only smile. Lon Anren would be late if she wasn't in the examination hall 15 minutes before the test started. Lon Yashin glanced up at the wall clock silently. There was still 1 minute left before Lon Anren would be disqualified. Suddenly, a pretty girl walked in, carrying a backpack and had her hair tied into a high ponytail. She allowed the facilitator to check her while she looked at Lon Yashin with a smile. The facilitator was a middle-aged man with a beer belly. He eyed the girl with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He then looked at his watch and said at the last minute, "You're late. Teacher, if you don't let me in now, I'm really going to be late. There is 1 minute left." Lon Anren laughed, her eyes sparkling. Go in, the man said grumpily. He disliked people that were late. Looking at her appearance, she probably wasted time on putting herself together. Such students wouldn't be able to get good results even if they came for the test. Lan Yashin was furious. F***ck. How did she make it here with only 1 minute left? Let's see how proud she is after the results are out. Lan Anren ignored the look from Lan Yashin and Sun Hui, directly walking to her seat. She took out a pen and wrote down her name. She glanced at the test paper and smirked. This test paper was too simple for her. Lan Anren began to write on the test paper hurriedly, finishing both sides in half an hour. Bored that she had nothing to do, she lay down on the table and slept. Sun Hui sat behind Lan Anren and saw that she was asleep, certain she was stumped by the problem. This was the case for those who were poor students. This time, she was surely going to get kicked out of the experimental class. She found today's question a bit difficult and had left several theoretical explanation questions blank as she hadn't studied them before. She had no idea why the examiner had made such difficult questions. The facilitator saw Lan Anren sleeping soundly on the table. He walked over to remind her, "Student, check your work after you're done and take more time for questions you don't know. It's only been half an hour and you're asleep." Lan Anren was awakened by the rough male voice. She rubbed her eyes and asked in a daze, "Teacher, when can we submit our papers?" The man looked at Lan Anren's paper. The handwriting was beautiful, the whole paper was full of words, and there was a look of surprise in his eyes. "After 1 hour," he replied. After he skimmed through it, he placed the paper down and left in silence. He hadn't expected her to have filled up the test paper in just half an hour, but judging from the looks of it, she must have written nonsense. Lan Yashin sat in front of Lan Anren. She looked back when she heard the voice and almost laughed when she saw Lan Anren's appearance. She was indeed from the countryside. These topics were a bit difficult for her, not to mention Lan Anren. Lan Anren slept for another half an hour before the facilitator called out loudly, "You can hand in your test papers. If you want to hand them in, you can hand them in advance and leave when you are done." Lan Anren was awakened by the sound. She stretched, tidied her things, took the test paper, and placed it on the podium. She was the first in the entire examination room to hand in her test papers, so everyone looked at her in surprise as she left the classroom. Once she left, Lan Anren sat down at a random cafe and took out her laptop. She couldn't go back yet. If she went back too early, her parents would be suspicious. She was browsing the web with her slender fingers when suddenly she saw a post offering a reward and her eyes widened. She read aloud, looking for the mysterious organization Xiang Tian. Reward: 10 billion yuan. Chapter 40. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Unusually shameless translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations 10 billion. She had just spent 5 billion and wouldn't be able to earn 10 billion by selling herbs. But Xiang Tian was too mysterious. In recent years, there were countless headhunting hackers and detectives trying to find him, but they had no luck. If she found him, she would become famous in the hacker world. However, Lan Anren's head was spinning quickly. Wouldn't Xiang Tian know about such a public posting? Was this a trap? There were many people who wanted to find Q over the years. What if? Even if it was a trap, the 10 billion was too attractive. She was very poor and only had 50 million on hand. Otherwise. Lan Anren's eyes turned and she decided on a plan to replace the real thing with a fake. She smiled, her long and slender fingers clicking on the accept button. She was taking the job. She turned off the computer and put it in her bag before walking out of the cafe to the hospital. After Lan Yanran finished the test and left the examination hall, he couldn't find Lan Anren and thought that his sister had done badly as well and must have gone to the hospital to complain to their mom. He wanted to air his grievances as well, but when he didn't find Lan Anren at the hospital, he thought that Lon Anren had gone into hiding because she didn't do well. With a deep sigh, he entered the hospital ward. "Mom, I let you and Dad down. The exam was too difficult. I might not even pass the written exam." "It's alright, Yenran. If you don't do well, we will forget it. Your grandma will just nag on you a few times, but it doesn't matter to us." Li Yueru caressed Yenran's head and smiled. She knew her son best. He wasn't good at medicine at all, but he was born in the Lon family and had to shoulder the mission. Otherwise, she would have told him to drop out of school. "Mom, you are so kind. Will Sis be upset too?" Lon Yenran didn't have to think to know it was definitely the case. His sister had never learnt medicine and the test was so difficult. She might have gone to hide because she was afraid their mom and dad would be upset. "I didn't see your sister. Your sister is sensible. She must have failed the exam today. It's my fault, I shouldn't have allowed her to enter the competition. I don't know how we're going to be ridiculed this time." There was another trace of sadness on Li Yueru's face. "Mom, don't worry, this will pass." Lon Anren pushed the door open, with a relaxed expression on her face. Lon Yenran turned his head and felt even worse when he saw his sister like this. She had to be appearing relaxed so that they wouldn't be upset. Li Yueru held Lon Anren's hand and comforted her. "Anren, Mom knows you didn't do well today. It's alright, you haven't studied medicine before. It's normal that you don't know these things. You don't have to feel pressured. Your dad and I understand, we don't blame you. Mom, the test results will come out in 2 days. I will definitely pass." Lon Anren replied easily. Seeing Lon Anren's confidence, Li Yueru couldn't say much. "Mom, how do you feel today?" Lon Anren asked. "I'm feeling much better. I don't know why, but my body feels better and better. I'm 100 times more relaxed than before." Li Yueru smiled, her eyes were bright and energized with a slight glow to her face. Lon Anren was very happy to see her mother like this. It seemed that the fennel was really an incredible ingredient. At this moment, Lon Yashin's voice suddenly came from the door and they turned to look. "Sis, why didn't you tell me that second aunt is sick? I heard about it from our teacher and rushed over after the test was over. Is she alright?" Lon Yashin was very shrewd. Her eyes turned quickly and she walked over and took Li Yueru's hand with a well-behaved and harmless expression. Li Yueru was a little resistant, but she was an elder and couldn't make it too obvious, so she had to smile. "It's nothing, just an old problem. Anren has been taking good care of me and I will be discharged from the hospital soon. Second aunt, my parents know it too, but they are too busy, so they told me to visit. I hope you don't mind." Lon Yashin didn't forget about her parents while making herself known. She couldn't give them any chance to talk poorly about her parents. "It's nothing. It doesn't matter, I know your parents are busy." Li Yueru didn't care too much about it. Besides, she wasn't telling the truth. If they had wanted to come, they would have come by now instead of sending this little girl over to show concern. What can they be busy with? Playing mahjong or betting on soccer? Lon Yenran asked softly. Su Yenshan didn't have much work and her biggest hobby was playing mahjong. She could sit at the mahjong table for 20 hours without getting tired. Lon Tingyi was worse. He would watch football every day and all his money was used for gambling. When the family ran out of money, they would get old Mrs. Lon to complain that Lon Tingyun wasn't giving her enough money. She would then find Lon Tingyun to get some money. Each month, the salary Lon Tingyun earned not only went to his home and the hospital, but also to old Mrs. Lon. Because of this, the Lon family's funds were very tight. Lon Yashin's face fell and she said in embarrassment, "I can't do anything about my parents, we can't compare to my second aunt's family. You should know about the situation in my house and the month is about to end." Second aunt, she stopped midway and lowered her head, looking at Lan Tingyun and his family with the side of her eyes. Li Yueru knew what she was implying and was just about to say something when Lan Anren interrupted, "It's the end of the month. Uncle and aunt should bring something to see mom. How could you come empty-handed? You don't have to beat around the bush if you're asking for money. Besides, you are unusually shameless, so are you perhaps afraid of embarrassing yourself?"